Hello once again, and welcome back to Viper Bites Thursday Night Football. We've got the 3-3 Denver Broncos heading to the 3-3 Cleveland Browns in a game that was a lot more exciting just a few weeks ago. But hey, we're here. My show notes are done. We're going to talk Thursday Night Football. I'm going to talk you through how I see this game kind of playing down here. Now, we're going to get right into it right off the get-go, because we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos first, and then we're going to head over to the Cleveland Browns. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're catching us for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button there on YouTube, smash that like button, get in the comments, let me know what you think of the show. And as always, hit me up on Twitter, @MattDonnellyFF. It's right down there somewhere. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm working the screen. Send me your questions and slide in the DMs if you want to keep it secret from your rest of your league mates. I will answer your questions as best as I can. And every once in a while, I'm right when I answer questions. So I'm batting about 300, give or take. No, I'm just kidding. I always have time to answer questions for each and every one of you. So head in there, jump in, get in the comments. And you know what? If you're listening to Apple or on Spotify or anything else that Anchor platforms allow you to do, again, appreciate that. Make sure you rate and review. Throw some stars up there. Make sure you get those comments in, because I read each and every one of those comments and I appreciate the feedback. That being said, let's head to the Denver Broncos side of things. Let's head to Teddy Bridgewater, who, for a lack of better terms, did not look good against the Raiders last week. He was sacked 5 times, and he was under pressure for what seemed to be the entire contest. Bad news for you. You've got Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett coming at you now instead of Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby. So, yeah, good luck there, Teddy. He also, at the end of the day, his QBR was about 30.2. Yeah, but sadly, Teddy hasn't hit more than 60 when it comes to that quarterback rating all season. Sure, the yardage was nice to see from a fantasy standpoint, because garbage points count as well as any points you can possibly get there. They don't ask you how, they ask you how many. He did throw for 334 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns. He also had 3 interceptions, which kind of negate. Let's see, that's a -9. Touchdowns over 6. That basically got rid of, you basically threw 1.5 touchdowns. That's not so good for fantasy. You were averaging 6.8 yards per attempt. That number there hasn't been above 8 since back in week 3 against the New York Jets. In fact, Bridgewater is only averaging 16.86 fantasy points per contest this year, which has him sitting as the QB 18. If it wasn't for garbage time against the Raiders, those numbers would probably look much, much worse. Against Vegas, he was one of only 12 quarterbacks last week to score more than 20 fantasy points, thanks in large part to 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, both to Cortland Sutton, to Noah Fant. At the time of the Sutton score, the Raiders were already up big. They were already up 31-10 heading into that fourth quarter. Teddy had all kinds of time to throw. The game was well in hand. Like I said, they don't ask you how. They ask you how many. Teddy got those fantasy points. He was a QB1 last week. Don't expect that to happen again against the Cleveland Browns in that defense. Now, heading to the running game for the Broncos, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are essentially one and the same. They're interchangeable in every way, shape, and form in this backfield. Gordon has an ever so slight edge when it comes to carries, 70 carries to 65. In rushing yards, 332 to 300. Yards per carry, 4.6 to 4.5. Even their receiving totals are very similar, with Williams recording 14 receptions and 90 yards, and Gordon has 1 less catch and 119 yards. Even in a negative game script in which Denver was chasing the points last week, Williams had 11 carries for 53 yards. And guess what? Had 3 catches to Gordon's 15. And he had basically 10 catches for 50 yards and 3 for 23. So the big thing is only 1 touchdown really separates Gordon. And Williams has only got the 1 trip to the end zone so far this season. The biggest difference between the two in PPR is the gap in the fantasy rankings. Gordon has 70.2 fantasy points, which puts him as the RB18, whereas Javonte Williams sits at 25 with 57 fantasy points. And then per PFF, Javonte Williams leads all running backs in missed tackles forced per carry at 0.34. Williams also ranks 6th in yards after contact behind the likes of Nick Chubb, James Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and Kareem Hunt. except he's only getting about a 51% of the share of the snaps. So that kind of limits him a little bit. Both these guys are going to see a little bit of run in this game. Now, we talked about Cortland Sutton, and people are saying sell Sutton now before Judy comes back. I'm saying buy. Yes, Sutton's production was limited in week 1 with Judy in the lineup, but Sutton should see you got to remember, he was coming off an ACL as well. He's finally getting his groove back. Sutton is getting his groove. He should see less coverage heading his way once Judy returns. And on the season, Cortland Sutton has 33 receptions for 471 yards while seeing 53 targets. Sutton now has back-to-back games in which he's recorded a touchdown, and in 3 of his last 5 without Judy this season, he has recorded 90 receiving yards and double-digit targets, including the last 2 contests. Sorry, Maple Bug just caught my attention there flying by. This is the kind of stuff you don't get on any other show. Now, Tim Patrick, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. You're going to have a little bit more play with Tim Patrick this week until Judy returns. Since Judy went on the IR, Patrick has 2 games in which he has more than 85 receiving yards, and he's seen at least 5 targets in each game in Judy's absence. Patrick has been a waiver wire darling early on, and through 6 weeks, he has 344 receiving yards on 25 receptions. Tim Patrick entered last week with 127 targets without a drop. He added 6 more targets to that total. That's 133 targets without a drop. Consecutive. Now, I can't even go from the fridge with a thing of butter without dropping it, let alone going 133 targets without dropping the ball. That said, it's safe to say that maybe Teddy should be targeting Tim Patrick a little more often, especially when you factor in Tim Patrick has a 73.5% catch rate, or his impressive catch rate over expected that sees him as one of the top 5 receivers in that category. Now, we talked about Jerry Judy. He's not going to be back in this game. It's unlikely that he returns at all until week 8. I guess that is this game. If this game was on Sunday, I think there was an opportunity that it could have possibly happened, but the short turnaround, the Sunday to the Thursday, made it inevitable that Judy would not be able to make this game. Now, I think it's realistic to believe when Judy returns in week 8 against that showdown against Washington, you're going to be able to fire up Jerry Judy a little bit more. And that's going to really hamper the ceiling there on Tim Patrick. Now, as far as the tight end position goes, Noah Fant finally got back in the good graces of fantasy managers everywhere last week. Yes, he too got some garbage time love. But again, no one asks how. They ask how many. His 97 receiving yards were more than his previous 3 games combined, and he managed to score his 3rd touchdown of the campaign. There's been a little bit of a pattern when it comes to touchdowns in Noah Fant so far this season. He has touchdowns in weeks 2, week 4, and week 6. So the law of logic says it won't happen here against the Browns. Okay, it's not really logic, but I'm saying it anyway. Both week 4 and 6, Noah Fant saw double-digit targets and had 5 or more receptions in each of those contests. But outside last week's yardage numbers, he has failed to record more than 50 yards in any game outside of week 1, where he had 62 yards against the New York Giants. Now for the Cleveland Browns, the infirmary room is probably getting more work than the practice field is. Let's be honest here. I had all my notes driven on Baker Mayfield, and I literally had to rewrite this just before recording as Baker Mayfield is out and Case Keenum has been named the starter. Thank you, Sleeper, for those notifications prior to recording. Now, he is not alone. Nick Chubb is out. Kareem Hunt is out. We'll get into that and what that all means. Basically, I mentioned this on the Vipercast last night. The Cleveland Browns are turning into Monty Python's Black Knight. Think about it. We've got Baker Mayfield has a labrum torn in his non-throwing shoulder. He represents the non-throwing shoulder of the Black Knight. Nick Chubb has a calf injury that's keeping him out of this game. But guess what? That is going to be the Black Knight's left leg. And Hunt, the right leg, because of what he's dealing with. You've basically got the Cleveland Browns as a Black Knight going, it is but a flesh wound. And they're going out there and they're playing because they can still play the type of football they want to play. And Case Keenum, well, he's no slouch. Baker Mayfield hasn't thrown for more than 250 yards in 4 of 5 contests, with his only significant output coming against the Los Angeles Chargers back in week 4 in that 47-42 overtime shootout. Now, Case Keenum doesn't have a lot to lean on. He doesn't have Nick Chubb. He doesn't have Kareem Hunt. Instead, he has been given the opportunity to play with waiver wire sensation, the Ernest Johnson. Please tell me you did not go spend all your waiver wire, fab, whatever you want to call it, on Ernest Johnson. We've seen how this show plays out. We've been down this road. We've wasted our money on him in previous seasons, and as well as Demetric Felton. No disrespect to either one of those guys, but neither one of them are Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt or any part of them. And we both know that both these players are going to be missing action, and it is a major loss for this Browns offense. Now, Baker Mayfield, his 1,474 yards, is in the bottom third in the league when it comes to passing. He has been sacked 12 more times than he has passed for touchdowns. That's right. He's got 6 passing touchdowns and has been sacked 18 times in 6 games. And guess what, Case? It gets worse because you're still got some injuries at the tackle position. And now you've got Von Miller and company for the Broncos coming at you. This is not ideal for Case Keenum and the Broncos offense this week, especially missing 2 of their biggest players in the run game, 2 of their tackles. It's not good. Maybe Tua could come play for Cleveland this week. I don't know. I doubt it. But, we're just going to throw that out there because Tua Tagovailoa, he's going everywhere so far this season as far as trade targets go. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's keep this show rolling here. Keenum is 1 of 3 this year for passing with 6 whopping yards. Kudos to him. To his credit, last year, he was 5 of 10. He was for 46 yards. He hasn't thrown a touchdown since 2019 when he was with the Washington football team. In 2019, Case Keenum started in 8 games, and he threw for 1,707 yards and 11 touchdowns. Kind of sounds like Baker Mayfield type numbers, don't you think? But you have to go back one more season where he started 16 games for the Broncos to see where his true value is. In 2018, he threw for 3,890 yards. He had 365 completions. He also tossed 18 touchdowns. So there was a time back when he was a Bronco when Case Keenum was serviceable for fantasy football. Kinda. That may be in a bit of an stretch trying to connect the dots there. Now, we know Nick Chubb, he missed last week. He's out again this week. It looks like Kareem Hunt is going to miss significant time after exiting last game. He's heading to the IR. Coach Stefanski basically gave us a bit of a timeline when it comes to Hunt and says it's not good. He said he's looking at about a 4 to 6 week absence. Heading to the Arizona contest, Chubb had been second in the league in rushing yards, trailing only Derrick Henry, and currently sits at 523 yards in 5 games. In fact, he's still second in the league in rushing, but you can expect several backs to pass him this week in his absence. If you're looking for a silver lining of sorts, it may be that once Chubb is back there, there's nothing to hold him back. If you go back to 2018, when Kareem Hunt was unavailable due to suspension, Chubb averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game and was receiving 20 or more touches in 7 of those 8 games in which Kareem Hunt was not available. It looks like Ernest Johnson will be used as the primary back with Demetric Felton coming in and getting the work in the passing game and playing more of that Cordero Patterson type role for the Cleveland Browns. Don't worry, Demetric Felton will get some carries, and we'll likely see whichever back is producing is probably the one who's going to see more touches as this game goes on. Now at the wide receiver position, it's a little bit better than the running back position. I'll be honest here. Odell Beckham Jr. has 4 games under his belt now. He's played in the last 4 contests, apparently. He's still trying to form that chemistry with Baker Mayfield. Luckily, he doesn't have to worry about it because now he gets to form chemistry with Case Keenum. And Case Keenum doesn't need to form chemistry with anybody because he's just going to go out there and throw that ball to whoever he can possibly get the ball to. Now, OBJ, he's got 14 catches for 203 yards on 27 targets this season, and he's not really able to get to the end zone. It hasn't happened. He has a pair of games in which, over that 4-game period there, 2 of those games, which kind of gives us a little bit of hope that there's possibility of production coming, in which he's got 75 or more yards, but he also has had 8+ targets in each of those contests. So We've got 2 games in which he's got the 75 yards or more. He's got 8 or more targets in those games. It's the other 2 games where he hasn't done much for us. Which Odell Beckham Jr. are we going to get against these Broncos with the line the way it is for Cleveland, with the backup quarterback, with no run game? I'm venturing to guess that the targets might be there, but they may be a little inaccurate. Now, Jarvis Landry was close to returning last week. Looks like he's going to be back in the lineup for the Browns this week, which is some much-needed good news after dealing with the Chubb being inactive just before kickoff last week. Baker and Hunt both being injured in that game. So far, Landry has only participated in 2 games, really only 1, excluding the Texans game. And in that game against the Chiefs back in week 1, Jarvis Landry caught all 6 targets for 71 yards. Just something to keep an eye on. If Jarvis Landry is anything, it's consistent. Now, Donovan Peoples-Jones. He is a hot waiver target, especially after his 101-yard performance with 2 touchdowns against the Cardinals. He's posted back-to-back games in which he's produced 70 or more receiving yards and saw 5 or more targets. With Landry set to return, and hopefully Chubb as well, we know how that's going to go, Peoples-Jones' ceiling seems to be somewhat capped. The 3 previous games he played prior to the Chargers and Cardinals game, he only had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 57 yards. It wasn't until the last 2 weeks where Peoples-Jones really got rolling. Now we know already Chubb, Hunt, they're out. Demetric Felton may be the guy who gets a little bit more play in the passing game, especially with the way this game script could end up where the Browns are chasing the points with the Broncos. I really don't know how this game is going to play out because the way these teams are right now, where they're kind of banged up at the quarterback position, I can't even guarantee Teddy Bridgewater finishes this game. We may have Case Keenum versus Drew Lock at some point on Thursday night. Now, Peoples-Jones, I could see him getting loose for a deep ball. I think he's going to be that YOLO kind of guy for Case Keenum. I think Case Keenum's going to take advantage of Jarvis Landry underneath when he gets that opportunity to do so. He's going to probably sprinkle in a few passes to Odell Beckham Jr. But when he's looking to hit that deep ball, I think it's going to be Peoples-Jones who's going to be the beneficiary of that in this game. Now, the tight end position, get this. David Njoku is the club leader for the Browns in receiving yards. Okay, now those receiving numbers may be a little bit inflated by his 7-catch, 149-yard game against the Chargers a couple weeks ago. In fact, if you remove that game, you get just 117 yards and only 8 catches. And most of that happened in week 1's loss against the Chiefs. So he had 76 yards against the Chiefs that game. He had 149 against the Chargers. And nothing really outside of those 2 games. What I'm saying is 3 of those 5 games thus far have been ungood, in which he's recorded 20 or fewer receiving yards. For me, the potential's there. You could have a big game this week, but you could also have a really bad game. In fact, I'm not trusting Njoku in my lineup. I'd rather run a Ricky Seals, Jones, or I don't know, throw just about any, maybe even Russ Dwelly. Give me Russ Dwelly over David Njoku this week. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now. The way I see this game playing out, I think this is literally going to be a war of attrition out there. Whichever team can stay the healthiest, the longest in this game is likely going to win. It's like both these teams are in the first inning of the baseball game and are already going to their bullpen. It's not going to be a good game very long. Teams are going to struggle. You're going to wear down. It's going to get ugly. I think we could see lots of fantasy points. But the one thing that both these teams have is a good defense. Expect some touchdowns on the defensive side of the ball this week. Look for Myles Garrett. Look for Jadeveon Clowney. Get that pressure in on there. Look for Von Miller to wreak havoc as well. And I would not be surprised if Patrick Surtain does his best Trevon Diggs impression and houses an INT in this game at some point. Now, with that all said, this is the Thursday night football preview show. We've talked about it all. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more content coming at you daily here. We've got the Sunday night football coming. We've got the Monday night football. We've had our waiver wire drop on, Tuesday. We're going to have the starts and sits. They're dropping on Wednesday afternoon, which should drop actually right now if you go to the YouTube channel, which you've probably seen if you're actually watching on YouTube. But make sure you're checking out each and every one of these shows. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you're checking out the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast every Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern on this channel. And on Friday, we're going to sit down at 1 p.m. Eastern with Yahoo's own Andy Behrens and talk about his behind the grind in the fantasy football industry. And while you're at it, make sure to head over to fantasypoints.com, enter promo code 21Vipers10, get 10% off your subscription to the website. I guarantee you it is the one subscription you don't want to miss. You want stats and facts? You got it. You want analytics? You got it. You want some of the best breakdowns of matchups and whatnot? They've got articles for that too. So head over to fantasypoints.com, get in on it, and use that promo code 21Vipers10. Save yourself a little bit of money. Get yourself that edge on your competition. Till next time, we'll see you then.